Whenever you see a gas pipeline, a compressor station, or a liquefied natural gas terminal, the company who built those projects had to get approval from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. 5 FERC commissioners are appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. The President chooses one of the commissioners to be the chairman. FERC regulates the interstate transmission of electricity, natural gas, and oil. It was established to be an independent panel, but critics say that's not the case. The Delaware Riverkeeper Network has been in the lead in fighting a number of FERC-approved pipeline projects.
It is neither morally nor legally legitimate for FERC to approve construction of a pipeline project, granting exemptions from state and local laws, giving the power of eminent domain, approving unmitigatable and irreparable environmental and community harms, so that a pipeline company can achieve corporate goals or greater profits and a competitive edge.
Before FERC gives the green light to the owners, it has a docket system for projects where the people living in impacted communities or other interested parties can submit their comments and concerns.
Despite the level of sophistication, the accuracy of the accuracy of the public comments, many times the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission ends up dismissing summarily or haphazardly many of the comments that come into the agency, particularly those opposing the pipeline project or questioning its need or questioning the environmental impacts of the project.
Aaron Stempelwitz monitors pipeline projects for the Delaware Riverkeeper Network and has represented the organization in lawsuits fighting those projects.
So, we see the process as almost, hoops that FERC is required to jump through when we already know what the final outcome is going to be. Now, that's not to discourage people from being engaged and submitting comments and being active.
The results? Pipelines that damage wetlands, forests, and cut through private property without just compensation for losses.
But what we see in the real world is if you walk a pipeline right of way, you're going to see a wetland that used to be a forested wetland that is turned essentially into an open body of water with little to no ecological value. And so the application may look good on its face, but many times the follow-through by the pipeline company and the follow-through by FERC in reviewing and continuing its jurisdiction after the pipeline gets put in place to make sure that everything that the mitigation procedures outlined in the permits or in FERC's approval are followed often doesn't happen.
Critics of FERC also say the agency doesn't do enough to ensure safety. The Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, oversees pipeline safety. The Delaware Riverkeeper Network says the agency's regulations are limited. An example, PHMSA does not have regulations for internal erosional velocities for gas moving through pipelines.
But what FERC refuses to do is to acknowledge comments, expert comments that we've submitted and that others have submitted, and the ones we've submitted have been from pipeline engineers raising significant concerns about internal erosional velocities. And FERC discards these concerns and simply defers to the applicant. The applicant says it's safe, and that's good enough for FERC without providing any actual data, without providing any citations to literature, journal articles, or any peer-reviewed data to back up what they're saying.
Farmers and other property owners say they have suffered because of FERC decisions approving pipelines.
I'm a witness to the destruction of trees that had no relevance to the power companies and FERC. I am hopeful that the pipelines were built correctly so my house and farm do not blow up.
People who voice their concern and anger at FERC meetings in Washington, D.C. are often removed from the room.
You're upset about climate change, and you are here today to continue the approval of devastating fracked-out pipeline projects, spewing methane, harming communities. You're stealing property rights. You're taking clean water.
The air that is so precious. happens with FERC really is a sham. There's no really delicate way to put it. Many, if not most, of these environmental analyses are actually not done by FERC staff, but are done by private contractors hired by FERC, but paid by the pipeline company that is applying for FERC permitting. So there already you have an inherent conflict of interest.
Itai Varde is a reporter who has written about FERC.
From the world that I know, you work for the person or the organization that pays you money. And that already is a very problematic relationship.
Until recently, FERC had never denied an application for a pipeline. In 2016, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network filed a lawsuit against the agency, saying FERC's review and approval process for pipeline projects violates the due process rights of the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. FERC's one permit denial came after the organization's lawsuit was filed.
In that instance, it would have been hard for FERC to do anything but do what it did, because the pipeline company didn't even have the necessary contracts in place to justify the need. So it wasn't a denial even then based on environmental concerns. Rather, it was a denial because the pipeline company couldn't show that it was going to continue to pay, would have the resources to pay the shippers to use the pipeline appropriately, and therefore FERC wouldn't be getting the money that it otherwise could be because the shipping contracts were not sufficiently established.
In the lawsuit, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network also sought to change the funding source for FERC. The agency charges companies a fee for individual projects under review.
And that, again, places it in a bind, in an inbuilt conflict of interest, where in order to receive certifications and permitting from FERC to build large energy infrastructures, the very companies have to first pay FERC very large application dues.
Varde says many employees and commissioners move from their jobs at FERC to jobs in the gas industry or have other contacts with the industry.
The revolving door phenomenon, where public servants move seamlessly from their public service posts to the private industry, and often the industry that they previously regulated or oversaw, in many instances, is very apparent in FERC. It's obviously the revolving door phenomenon is common across the board in government agencies, but as far as I know, in FERC, it's really dramatic.
Varde says one possible solution to the problem is a cooling off period between departure and working for the industry. There have been calls for reforms at FERC, but Congress has been hesitant to take action.
So you have potentially three sectors, again, utilities, the pipeline industry, or what's known as midstream, and the actual resource mining energy companies. So a very powerful kind of trifecta there. Many of them funding, the campaigns and lobbying consistently, really hiring army of lobbyists in Washington to continuously get their way